Council had a closed session prior to this meeting, so I will reconvene the meeting at 7 p.m. I'll now read a land acknowledgement. As visitors on this land, the town of Bradford, Gwillimbury acknowledges that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, which includes Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We recognize the Huron-Wendat, Chippewa, and Haudenosaunee nations have walked on this territory over time. In times of great change, we recognize more than ever the importance of honoring Indigenous history and culture and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation, respect, and good health with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. All right, there's no motions that arise out of closed, so adoption of the agenda. So I have a recommendation, we're at 5, section 5. So recommendation that the special council agenda dated August 12, 2025 be adopted as amended. Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Dykey. Question or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And I'll just mention that we have a couple of councillors that are attending virtually. We have Councillor Giordano virtually. Councillor Harper is attending virtually. He will be here, if he's not here now, he'll be here in a second. And we have Councillor Dehaney, which is unable to attend tonight. And that's it. Okay. Okay, declaration of pecuniary interest, the general nature. If you have a pecuniary interest, you can let us know. Councillor Ferragini.
8.2.2. What is it? A2.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's the red line revision for zoning bylaw. Okay. Okay, duly noted. All right. Any further declarations? Seeing none, moving on. We're on to the public meeting, the 2025 Soft Services Development Charge. So purpose of the meeting. The meeting is a public meeting of council being held under sections 12 of the Development Charges Act 1997 as amended. The purpose of the meeting is to allow the public the opportunity to review and provide comments on the 2025 Soft Services Development Charge background study and bylaw. Members of the public begin an opportunity to speak through the presentations. Following the presentations, comments presented at the public meeting are being recorded by staff. Personal information is being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Questions regarding the collection and use of personal information should be directed to the clerk. So now the presentation. The town's consultant, Daryl Abbs of Watson and Associates Economists Limited, will now present the findings to the town of Bradford. Daryl, the floor is yours. Just press the big button. Good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to members of council. Pleasure to be here this evening. So I have a brief presentation. As you mentioned, this is a public meeting to be held under the Development Charges Act as part of the Development Charges background study process that we're undertaking. My name is Daryl Abbs. I'm a managing partner with Watson and Associates Economists Limited. I've been with the firm just over 10 years and work in development charges, qualified as an expert in development charges, and work on all things municipal finance. So if we can go to the next slide, please. And we'll jump 2 more slides, please. Perfect. So as mentioned, the public meeting is a mandatory part of the public process. And as you mentioned, it really is to give the public an opportunity, a chance to ask questions, but as well, it gives council a chance to ask questions in the public forum. The point of this public meeting is to summarize the background study, the calculations, the policy set out in that study, and as well what's going to be included in the bylaw that council will consider. The background studies are typically something like 200-something pages, so this is a good opportunity to summarize the information in that. As you mentioned, once we present the proposed policies and charges, happy to hear or answer any questions from council, any questions from the public, and then we can formally conclude the public meeting. Next slide, please. So as part of the process, and we'll talk a bit about the timelines on the next slide, this is part of the mandatory process, but one of the things we have to do is prepare a detailed background study, put that on your website, and that starts the clock, so to speak, for the public process. Once we have the study on the website, council can then consider the bylaw for passage 60 days after that. And if we go to the next slide, we'll show you that we've actually extended this process a little bit. So we started the process back actually last year in undertaking the calculations for the soft services bylaws, and I'll talk a little bit about the difference between the soft services and the hard services as we go through the presentation. And then we released the study actually back in May. Now, we had a stakeholder meeting, met with the development community to present this information as well, but we decided to have a little bit of a delayed process. There's some changes in legislation, which I'll talk to, and we wanted to make sure that the background study, the draft bylaw, was in line with the legislation that was coming forth. And so we're having the public meeting today. Council considered the bylaw on September 2nd, which actually is twice the amount of time we have to give, so 120 days instead of the 60 days. Next slide, please. And next slide. So development charges, what are they? They are a revenue tool used by municipalities to recover the capital costs associated with new development. So as you have new houses being constructed, new businesses being constructed, you have to accommodate those new businesses and residents with infrastructure. So we need to build new roads, new water, new wastewater, new parks, new recreation services, etc. And so development charges are to recover the costs in addition to what a developer would normally pay as part of their subdivision. So if you think of internal to a subdivision, developer would typically build the internal roads, water, sewers, sidewalks, etc. Development charges are really to collect for the broader infrastructure to connect to this system. Okay? And we're empowered to impose these charges under the Development Charges Act, and that's what's guided the preparation of the background study and the bylaw. Next slide, please. So this schematic really just summarizes that the money has to come from somewhere. And so at the top, we say we have new growth, we need to service those new users, and to the extent that the infrastructure is related to that new development, we can recover those costs and pay for that with development charges. If we're not paying for it with development charges, the money has to come from somewhere, and that would come from taxes or rates in the case of water and wastewater infrastructure. Next slide, please. So to summarize the approach we take in calculating development charges, we take the costs associated with the new development, divide it by the new development, and that'll give us a development charge per unit for residential growth and a development charge per square foot of area for non-residential growth. Next slide, please. And so the Development Charges Act has something like 60, 70 clauses in it, and there's been years of Ontario Municipal Board, LPAT, OLT cases that have helped kind of guide the preparation of the calculations. But we can boil it down to these few points. And so the first thing we need to do is identify the amount, type, and location of development. And that's set out in Appendix A or Chapter 3 to our background study. Once we know how much we're going to grow by and where that growth is going to occur, we can identify the servicing needs to accommodate that growth. From there, we can identify the specific projects that are going to meet that need. And those projects are all set out in the background study in Chapter 5. Once we identify those costs, we then need to make a series of deductions. So if we're going to receive grants, subsidies, or other contributions, we need to take that off the total project cost. If there's any component of the project that's going to benefit the existing community, so for example, if we're going to take a fire facility, knock it down, and build one twice the size, we need to account for the fact that we're replacing something that was there. If there's any amounts in excess of this historical service level calculation we have to do, we would have to deduct that as well. And then any balance in the DC reserve funds needs to be included in the calculations. So we have our total costs. We take off the costs that aren't associated with growth or new development. Then we're left with our growth-related costs. We then allocate that between residential and non-residential benefit, divided by the growth in each of those categories, and that will give us our development charge. Next slide, please. And so just briefly, I want to touch on some of the legislative changes that have occurred since the previous background study that was prepared. There's a lot of changes, but I will do my best to summarize the important changes here. And so back in 2019, The legislation, first kind of piece of legislation came in to change the Development Charges Act, really brought in two main components. The first being installment payments. So certain types of development, rental housing and institutional development, get to pay in installments. And then for certain types of development that proceed through site plan or zoning bylaw amendment applications, they get to have their rate frozen at the time they submit their application. You go through, approve the application. Once it's approved, they then have 2 years to pull that building permit, and they got to use that old frozen rate. When we go to 2020, Bill 197 came in. It removed this 10% mandatory deduction that we used to have to do for soft services. So that one was a positive for municipalities. And then it also included the list of eligible services right in the Development Charges Act. Finally, it brought in this new revenue tool that municipalities can consider, community benefit charges. That's a different revenue tool that applies to high density development, not considered as part of this process. Bill 213 brought in an exemption for universities, and then Bill 109 brought in some additional reporting rules for the treasurer's statement. Next slide, please. So then we get to Bill 23, and most people by now are aware of Bill 23. And really what this brought in for development charges was some reductions, some exemptions, some discounts for the development community. So these additional mandatory exemptions include any affordable housing required through inclusionary zoning, nonprofit housing, additional residential units. So if you have a single, semi, or townhouse or row house, you can put up to 2 apartment units and you don't have to pay a development charge on those. Affordable units, whether they're owned or rented, became exempt. And I'll talk a little bit about the definition of that. And then attainable units, although that still has yet to be defined, so it's in there, but there's no regulations defining it, so it's not really in place. Rental housing gets a discount based on the number of bedrooms, so they get to pay in installments, and they get a discount based on the number of bedrooms. As part of this process, they removed housing as an eligible service, which doesn't impact yourselves. And then they made some changes to the capital costs, but some of those changes were walked back, so I won't get into too much detail. So I mentioned there was the installment payments and the DC rate freeze that were brought in. This legislation here, this piece brought in a maximum interest rate you can impose on the rate freeze and the installment payments. It also brought in the requirement to allocate at least 60% of the money sitting in the reserve fund to projects. So typically through the budget process or through the annual treasurer statement, you would allocate the money to projects, and that was for water, wastewater, and roads, services related to a highway. Lastly, it brought in the extension of the DC bylaw life from 5 years. It extended that out to 10 years. Next slide, please. So in 2023, the province heard from municipalities and others in the area that the definition that they initially brought in for affordable housing exemption wasn't appropriate, and so they revised the definition to reflect more of an income-based approach. Ultimately, what this means in practice is there's a bulletin that the province posts. If they're going to sell the unit at or below the price in the bulletin for your municipality, or they're going to rent it out at or below that price that meets the definition of affordable, they can enter into an agreement to ensure it will remain affordable for a period of 25 years, and then they get the exemption. With respect to 2024, Bill 185, this really walked back some of those changes from Bill 23, and then as well shortened that DC rate freeze period from 2 years to 18 months. Okay. Next slide, please. I thought we were done with the legislative changes, but a couple more slides. We're talking about Bill 17, which came in 2025. And so part of this legislation is in force. Part of it, the province is still working on some regulations to bring it into force. So what is in force is an additional exemption for long-term care homes. They've revised the definition of capital cost so that they can change it in the regulations. We think that based on discussions with the development community, they're looking at some potential limitations on the inclusion of land costs in the DC. That's not yet known. They brought in a simplified amendment process, which actually is fairly helpful. If you're going to repeal the expiry date to go from your 5-year to your 10-year, or you're going to repeal the indexing provisions or reduce the development charge in any way, you can have this simplified amendment process where you don't need to do a background study. You just need to bring the bylaw amendment and provide notice that you've passed an amendment to the DC bylaw. As well, those cannot be appealed to the OLT. So there's streamlined process for that. So what's not yet in force is the deferral of payment to occupancy for residential development. So right now, if you have a rental housing development or institutional, you get to pay in installments. The first installment is upon occupancy. What the province is looking at doing is for all residential development, moving that payment from the building permit to occupancy. Still have to work out how that's going to work in practice. And so the province is looking at the regulations to maybe provide some securities to the municipality, a number of factors that they're looking at. So that's not yet in place. Ultimately, if we can figure out a smooth process, it'll mean more administrative work for staff, but ultimately a delay in cash flow. They removed the interest for the installment payments. So once this takes effect, no more interest on the installment payments. And then a minor amendment to the words here so that if, let's say, you have someone who wants to build one single detached home and the process is too onerous to pay at occupancy, they can just pay at building permit. So a little bit more flexibility in the legislation there. Next slide, please. And so we talked about the rate freeze that applies. What this change in the legislation does is requires you to impose the charge that's lower. So if you go through and you do the calculations for the rate freeze and you look at your rate today, whatever's lower is the rate that you're going to impose. And the reason they added this section in is because some municipalities, Vaughan, Mississauga, reduced their DCs by 50%. The challenge was the legislation was so rigid that if someone had a site plan or a zoning bylaw amendment, they had to pay the higher rates even though the rates were reduced. So this, if you bring an exemption, for example, or reduce the rates in any way, it allows you to impose the lower of the charges. And then lastly, the grouping of services for the purposes of credits. So today, if I build a water main, I get a credit against my water DC. So every time I go pay my development charge, I don't have to pay the water DC until I run out of credits. What they're looking at is grouping these into different buckets. So if I build a water main, it could also apply to my wastewater, my roads, etc. Still nothing on that. I think the province is still working on that. There are some other areas as well that they're looking at changing, providing a standardized calculation methodology for that benefit to existing calculation, looking at local service policies, which says what's the developer responsibility versus what goes into the DC. So some of those things are still to be worked out. But what we've done as part of this process in the draft bylaw is set up the bylaw such that when some of these things are proclaimed, then they will take effect, so you don't have to go back and amend your bylaw. Next slide, please. And next slide. Okay, so in terms of the calculations, in terms of the background study analysis, our growth forecast that we are looking at over the 10-year period is just under 13,000 people in about just under 6,000 residential units and just under 2.9 million square feet of non-residential floor space. With all of these services, we looked at a 10-year forecast, but for transit services, we do have to give mind to a longer term. So we did take a look at your 2051 forecast as well to inform the calculations. Next slide, please. And so if we look at your historical building permit activity, on average over the last 10 years is about 400 units per year in that range. What we're looking at in the forecast is about 560 units per year starting in 2026. Next slide, please. And next slide. So I mentioned the Development Charges Act now lists the specific eligible services for which you can impose a development charge. These are all listed here. What we've highlighted in the light blue, which is a little hard to see on the screen, is water, wastewater, and services related to a highway. Those are the services that we refer to as the hard services. Transit, policing, fire, library, and parks and recreation services along with public works and growth-related studies, are what's included in this soft services development charge. Next slide, please. And so again, Chapter 5 has all the detailed projects, the costing, the benefit to existing calculations, etc. But just to summarize by service here, you can see what we're looking at is about identified $272 million in potential capital projects. We have some deductions for post-period benefit, benefit to existing, etc. So ultimately what we've included in the calculations is about $150 million. Next slide, please. I mentioned we have to do an average level of service calculation to make sure we're not spending more than we have on the existing residents or that we have in the past. This is just a summary table which summarizes all of the detailed spreadsheets that are shown in Appendix B. But what is shown here is that we haven't exceeded any of these service levels when we look at the capital needs. Next slide, please. And next slide. So in the Development Charges Act, there previously was only a few mandatory development charge exemptions, and those were upper tier, lower tier, and school boards don't charge each other development charges. If I have an industrial building, I can expand it up to 50%, and I don't have to pay a development charge on that. But then Bill 23 brought in all those additional mandatory exemptions I noted. The Act does allow you to provide discretionary exemptions, and so you can reduce the charge in whole or in part for different types or classes of development. And so what we proposed is what you have in your current bylaw, which is public hospitals, non-residential farm buildings, places of worship, temporary garden suites, and on-site farm accommodations. You can also phase in the charge over time if you see fit. And one thing that's not an exemption, but something that's noted through case law, is redevelopment credits. So if I have a single detached home, I knock it down, I build 10 townhomes, I calculate the DC by 10 townhomes minus 1 DC for a single detached home. Okay, your bylaw has a sunset clause on that, which is allowed under the legislation of 5 years. So if I knock it down, then I have 5 years to put up the new one and to get the credit. If it's after that, no credit's provided. Next slide, please. So as part of the bylaw and as part of the background study, we've presented the calculations here. What we're looking at here for a single or semi-detached dwelling is in total $27,000 per unit. Other multiples are like your row houses, your townhouses, that's just over $21,000 a unit. Larger apartments, so 2 bedrooms or more, about $13,400 a unit. Apartments that are 1 bedroom or less, just under $8,900 a unit, and special care, special dwelling units, $8,100 a unit. Non-residential developments, $4.68 per square foot of building area. Next slide, please, and we'll show a rate comparison so you can see what the rates are today and what the calculated rates are. And so what we've highlighted is those services we're looking at as part of the soft services bylaw. The roads, the water, and the wastewater have not been considered as part of this analysis. And so what the change represents is about $7,600 increase in for a single detached home and just under $3 per square foot for the non-residential development. Next slide, please. And so just to show you where you are relative to some of the neighboring communities and the impact of the increase in charges, you'll see on the kind of left side with those arrows, that's the BWG Bondhead area. And so you can see the relative position relative to your comparators doesn't change, it increases slightly. And same thing for the Bradford area, increases slightly but doesn't change the relative position. Next slide, please. When we're looking at non-residential charges, if we look at commercial charges, you can see some slight change in position there for the Bondhead area, which is just above Stainer area in Clearview, but otherwise still at the lower end of the comparators here. And next slide, please. And then similarly with industrial charges, some municipalities have reduced industrial charges, which is why some of them are different, but you're still on that lower end and that similar relative position. Next slide, please. And next slide. So with that, the next steps are really for council to, subsequent to this public meeting, consider the bylaw on September 2nd for passage. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Daryl. A thorough presentation for everybody to understand. Thank you. So now it is time for the public participation. So members of the public are now invited to address council and provide any comments and ask questions. Please provide your name and speak directly in the microphone. If residents have prepared a written submission that they are reading from, please submit it to the clerk upon completion of your presentation. So I'll call for public participation. And I'll call a second time for public participation. Yep, come on up, state your name.
My name is Maria Cowley. I live on the 10th Side Road, south of the 5th line. Good evening, council members. Sure. I just had a question. It all sounded that was a great, I guess, presentation. My concern is, when it comes down to it, if we don't charge enough for these development charges to whoever wants to come in, build, whatever, where does that money come from? Do we have any reserves? Where is this money going to come? Is it taxpayers like us that are going to have to flip the bill, or are taxes going up? Can we get some kind of clarification? I guess, is that the only place we get the money from? Is it taxes, or we're pulling it from hats, or I don't know, whatever, from other places? I don't ask. Anyways, if you could answer that, that would be great.
Okay, I'll call him up. I'll just ask for more public participation, and if we don't have any more, then I'll call you up to answer that question. So I'll now call a third time for a public participation. Okay, seeing none, so I will call Daryl back up, or? Yeah, okay. You can answer that question, it'd be perfect.
So through the mayor, yeah, so in the development charge background study in chapter 5, we identify all those costs that we can allocate to the new development. And so that's how we've calculated the development charge. And so if we were not collecting development charges, the money would have to come from somewhere. And so it would have to come from your existing reserves, or it would require an increase in taxes if that may be the case. And so it either comes from development charges, doesn't come from there. If you get grants, that can help reduce the burden. Otherwise, it would come from taxes or reserves.
Okay, thank you. Does that help you with your question? Okay, thank you. All right, I will ask council if you have any questions. Okay, I'll go Deputy Mayor and then, okay, Deputy Mayor first, and then I'll come back this way.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. You know, when we say we charge the DCs, the development community will just in turn charge it back to the buyer, which at the end comes out of the buyer's pocket. They're not paying out of their pocket. So I have two questions. Can you explain the DCs are decreasing on the residential side for the library, but it's increasing on the non-residential side? Either I'm not seeing it right, if you can explain that. The other question I have is the deferral of the payment to occupancy date. What kind of cash flow problems it can create for the town?
So through the mayor, while I look for the library details, I'll speak to the cash flow considerations of deferral, and perhaps if Mr. Goodfellow wants to jump in as well. It really depends on the delay, the timing of how long of a delay there is until occupancy, and what the administrative burden is on tracking this. In terms of the kind of quantum of the cash flow impacts, I'm not quite sure what that would be, and maybe your treasurer can answer that. But I would say overall, rather than reducing DCs, at least delaying DCs, at least you're going to get the money just at a later date. Oh, I'm not sure. Ian wants to jump in?
Ian, you want to come up and help respond to some of these questions for us, please? And I've got on the list right now, so just let everybody know, I've got Councillor Kike next, Councillor Scott, Councillor Dykey, and Councillor Harper. Okay. You want to respond to the mayor's questions, or?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to add to what Mr. Abb said, interest charges are an eligible item under the Development Charges Bylaw and sort of Development Charges Act. So when the town is, or your development charge accounts are in a deficit position and they attract interest costs, those interest costs are in turn recoverable from growth as well. So should the changes such as you're speaking about the payment deferrals result in the time value of money costing the town municipality in terms of temporary borrowing or longer term borrowing, those interest charges are recoverable from growth. And ultimately, as Mr. Abb said, we will get the money in the fullness of time. It's just on a deferred basis for certain applications at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Kike next. Sorry, go ahead. Apologize, I thought we answered.
Yeah, sorry. So through the mayor, yeah. So with respect to the change in the library rate, I might have to take that away and then come back and give you a fulsome response, and I can respond through Mr. Griffel, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kike?
Yeah, I have two questions. The first one is, I think I know the answer, but what happens if we don't build 560 homes a year over an extended time period? What's the financial implications to having this higher number or lower number?
So through the mayor, so with respect to soft services development charges, so if you're not seeing the development that you're anticipating, because the expenditures for soft services typically occur after the building permit of these developments, I would say for soft services, probably less of a concern because then you can slow down on the capital investment. So although you might get less revenue, then you can spend less money to accommodate that lower development. The bigger challenge would be on the hard services where you have to provide that investment up front, which really just creates cash flow issues or potential cash flow issues where you have to carry some of the investment.
Okay. The second question is, we have a number of properties in the rural areas, Marsh included, where they're ready to fall apart, and property owners, their reasoning for keeping them up is they don't want to lose their DC credits, and they don't want to get a demolition permit. And I want to provide every carrot and stick in the book to try and get these ugly buildings down. And what's the process of getting that that credit allowance from 5 years to say 10 years or greater for the rural area?
So through the mayor, it's simply a motion through council at the bylaw passage. You can amend the bylaw at the bylaw passage date. Doesn't require anything else other than that, and then the bylaw can be amended before it's passed.
I'll have maybe our Director of Finance comment also.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'll even perhaps go one step further, that I think it would be appropriate if council had that desire, that you could provide that direction this evening, and we could incorporate that into the bylaw that when we bring it back on the 2nd of September. And as well, I don't know if the council's identified this as well, but we do have 2 development charges bylaws in place in the municipality. And as Mr. Abbs mentioned during his presentation, there's now an ability to have a simpler amendment process to our DC backgrounds, to our DC bylaws. So this is a change that, if council considering, could also extend it out to our hard services bylaw, which covers water, wastewater, and roads as well. So if council was of that mind, you could provide us a similar direction this evening on that bylaw, and we would return that bylaw on the 2nd of September as well for that minor update. And a change like that would not necessitate full public meeting process or updating the background study as such as you're receiving tonight for the soft services. So there is the ability to go even further with what you're talking about and extend that out to the hard services bylaw at this time as well.
Councillor Kike?
Yeah, I'd like to see that happen. So but that's just one.
No, that's okay. That's, I think we'd get some consensus around council to deal with that. So thank you for that, Director. I'll pass it on to Councillor Scott next. And Councillor Giordano, I have you after Councillor Harper.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. Believe it or not, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor for Kike each asked two of my questions, but I appreciated the question from the resident about how we fund the municipal business, because it leads into one of my questions. The Deputy Mayor mentioned that development charges 20 years ago, I think we thought of it as we were making the developer pay for the privilege of growth. Today, I think there's a lot more understanding that they pass it on to the home buyer. And in some cases, that can add as much as $130,000 to the sticker price of a home, which is significant on $1 million property. So I'm happy to see that we seem to be in a really good spot compared to our peer municipalities, not too high, not too low, probably just right. What I am concerned about is when we talk about everything we pay for, we're just talking about building a new subdivision, the hard services and the soft services, so that we build a complete community. We then have to operate those libraries or plow those roads, etc. And that's where the property tax base of what we're building has to be able to pay for themselves. And that's where the adage growth pays for growth often falls down on the job. So the CFO and I were talking about this yesterday or today. I have the sense that our soft services have a lower service level than they could to attract more development charges. And so my question is, am I right about that? And then I'll just add, I completely agree with extending the DC credit period for, in particular, marsh agricultural properties. If we can get rid of those derelict buildings by giving the farmer or the property owner peace of mind that if they tear them down, they're not going to be hosed on the DCs for the privilege of replacing a like-for-like building, I think that is an excellent tool to clean up some properties that have been in disrepair for longer than I've been alive, quite frankly. But that one question about how we're balancing service level in order to get the maximum from DCs, and then make sure that everything we build, we can actually afford to pay for it when it comes onto the property tax base as an operating expense.
Yeah, so through the mayor, great question. I think when you're looking at your service levels, you're typically doing so as part of a master plan, right? So if you're doing a Parks and Recreation master plan, you're going to say, well, how many arenas do I need for every 10,000 people? How many acres of parkland do I need for 1,000 people? That kind of thing. That's going to determine what your target service levels are. When you do something like a long-range financial plan, it brings all of those components together and then tells you, okay, what's the implication on the tax base of having all this development, of trying to meet these service level goals, take all of our capital needs, all of those additional operating costs, and then what does that mean to the tax base? And so I think when you do that kind of exercise, you can assess if, if there is a significant impact on the operating costs on taxes from growth. The kind of connection between the existing service levels and the development charge is just that when you're planning for a new growth, you're planning for a certain level of capital expenditure. And so once you put all those pieces of the puzzle together and see what the impact is, maybe when you go back and you do your master plan next time, maybe you say, well, maybe we can't afford all those expenditures. Maybe we do need to consider a reduced service level to consider a reduced operating cost. Those are the kind of things that you'd have to consider when you come back to through a master plan.
I'll just follow up, and this is probably more for Director Goodfellow because it's so local. We're doing some of that work already, as I understand, because we have a lot of older facilities that could be renovated or replaced to meet the service level that we now have. A prime example is the Danube Senior Center. It's going to be cheaper to build a new version of that facility on that property, but I know we're doing a lot of that master planning and financial planning. Can you maybe, Ian, comment on how the two fit together a bit?
Certainly, thank you for the question. So as Mr. Hobbs mentioned, it is, there's lots of information, lots of data that's being considered as part of a longer term financial plan. And in the example you mentioned, when there is, a tear down reconstruction, there's going to be a part that you're replacing. So as mentioned during the presentation, that replacement component cannot be charged to development, has to come from the existing town budgets and town's funds. But the additional part that you're building, so if you're doubling the building in size, if you're doubling the size of the structure, then 50% of it come from growth, 50% of it comes from the town's own funds. And just going back to your comment earlier, your question earlier, the soft service development charges, the math behind them, very high level explanation is that it looks at how much the municipality has invested on a per unit basis. So if we had invested X per capita in our indoor recreation over that historical service period, we can only collect X per capita, that same X per capita, from growth going forward. So there is a limit on how much we can collect from growth. Our calculations, our rates, we're maximizing that funding envelope. We're not leaving any money on the table with the rates that are proposed this evening. So we're maximizing this development charge tool as a means to pay for the future infrastructure of the municipality. So we're doing the best we can, but you're quite right. You have touched on something that if we have in theory, if we have historically underfunded a certain service, then that same phenomenon will go forward in terms of how much we expect growth to pay for it. So if we want to elevate our level of service, that is upon us to enhance the level of service in the municipality, then that will pay dividends in the future when we go and revisit our DC calculations in the future for soft services, and then recognize that we've had a higher level of service. So now we can, and we've invested Y per capita, for example, now we can collect Y per capita from growth going forward.
Sort of the municipal version of spend money to make money. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Dykey.
Just a few comments. I've seen this, your group, seeing Watson go from the initial study back in '88 to now, from $1,800 per home in Bradford, West Gwillimbury, to $70,000. And I know I look at this whole thing as a business plan. I know we need to collect the money to provide everything, but I think the province and the federal government needs to help us with these grants, because at the end of the day, you look at $70,000, $80,000, $100,000. I look at, and I appreciate your map that you gave us comparing other municipalities where we sit, but that is a big expenditure for a first-time home buyer or anybody, senior home, a young family, or anybody. It's a big piece of the puzzle that provides the cost of the home, and I would hope that federal, provincial levels can help municipalities with grants or loans, or to bring these DC charges to make them a little bit more affordable for everybody. Because at the end of the day, they want growth, and growth costs a lot of money. Roads, leisure centers, libraries, policing, everything costs a lot of money today. Everything's expensive, and especially with the downturn of this economy, to kickstart this whole economy, we got to keep affordable. And I'm glad to see that we're not the highest and we're not the lowest, and this is why it's very important that your group continues to be on top of these studies, because I've seen in the past, Bradford was going back in the 80s, we were too low. We were the first ones in Ontario that put in DC charges, and at the end of the day, we didn't have this opportunity. We didn't have this tool to collect from builders and developers, but we have to always, can't forget the fact that we have to continue to be affordable for everybody, because we could price ourselves out of the market, especially with DC charges when it comes to industry. It's a very competitive world with our neighbors to the south, and we have to have sharp pencils. So, but I appreciated your explanation tonight, and I'm sure the residents really understand. I know in the past, walking door to door, people ask me this question about DCs, but tonight you really explained it well, and I want to thank you and Ian with this study.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm on to Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Mayor. But given our growth projections, wouldn't lower DCs today create a structural tax pressure that will increase property taxes for decades? Considering we started really low, we're seeing a lot of infrastructure, municipal services like policing and Simcoe County taxes and educational taxes, they're going to keep going up. I didn't see those interpolating into your actual graph. Maybe I missed it, but maybe you can touch base on that. Our aim is to try to reduce the burden on owners that already exist here in Bradford. And what we've seen year over year over year is large increases, almost 16% increases in property taxes here. So that tells me when I see this chart for residential homes in Bradford, we are not collecting enough DC charges because we keep burdening ownership in Bradford with property tax increases. Maybe you can help me understand this.
So through the mayor, yeah, so with respect to the way that we've calculated the development charge, it follows what we're allowed to do under the legislation. And so as Ian mentioned, we've maxed out the charges based on that historic level of service that we're capped at, right? And so, so what we can do as part of the development charge study is charge the maximum amount you're able to as part of the calculations, the maximum amount that's justifiable to the tribunal. But what we can't do is charge any more than that. So we're limited by those capital costs divided, that's related to the new development, divided by the new development. In terms of its relationship with taxes, that's where, and I think to Councillor Scott's point, there's some additional operating costs. But what we find is happening is putting a lot of pressure is the life cycle costs through asset management. And so if we're properly planning for asset management, as we're now required to do under provincial legislation through the Infrastructure and Jobs and Prosperity Act, that cost requirement for every kilometer of pipe, every kilometer of road that you build is now higher. And so that could be in part where you're seeing some of those pressures on the taxpayer after the construction of this new infrastructure.
Okay, and Councillor Harper, just for clarity, did you say 16% tax increase year over year? Did I hear that right?
That's an accumulation over 10 years in Bradford. That's a total increase.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, did he get your, he answered your question? You're okay?
Yeah, well, obviously it's not satisfactory, but it did satisfy me that they're doing whatever they can on this end for DCs to really try to maximize low cost effectiveness, so low burden on the taxpayer. So that answered my question really well, so thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Giordano next.
I think I have more comments than anything else. Councillor Dykey, actually, I'm going to double down a little bit on some of the stuff you said. This is like a business plan. DCs are a tool. Reductions, extensions, all that stuff. It shouldn't be an assumed standard that people are going to get when they come to Bradford. It has to be a tool, a tactic that we implement only if it has a community tax-based benefit for the people who are here now. I look back to when this council first, basically came to be, and we sat down, we had strategic priorities. I think we need to have a holistic DC strategy with every new council that comes in to sit down and say, so what's our appetite for the DC strategy here? How, what areas are we going to focus on? One of the areas, just from your report I was looking at, it seems that there's a lot more DC value when it comes to commercial industrial versus the residential when it comes to, paying for growth and helping the tax base out. Maybe you can touch base on that.
So through the mayor, I think you're probably referring to the fact that relative to your comparators for the non-residential charges, they're a bit lower than the residential side. Yeah. So the one thing with the calculations is that we have to follow methodology that's defensible to the tribunal, defensible to the development community. And is based on our years of experience in undertaking development charges. And so really what we need to do is when we look at the capital costs and we determine how much of it's related to new development, we need to allocate those costs between residential and non-residential benefit. And so there's some standard approaches, some best practices that we follow, for things like Parks and Rec and library. It's 95% of the costs go to residential, 5% go to non-residential. And so for other services, we look at the incremental population growth relative to the employment growth. because that's typically what's going to drive the need for the capital or the need for the expenditure for the municipality. So although it might look like, there's some room maybe in the market to increase the rates a little bit, when we undertake the calculations, we still have to follow that defined methodology. So we don't really have flexibility in, let's say, increasing that and decreasing another unless it follows a best practice in the approach to the calculations.
Further comments, Councillor Giordano?
I think the CFO has some additional comments.
Sorry, okay. Ian?
Listening to Mr. Abs, one other component I thought of, and that's with respect to the other development charges that we're not talking about tonight that the town has in place. That's water, wastewater, and roads. Those calculations follow a significantly different methodology from what the soft serves are, where effectively there aren't limitations in place for those charges, such as there is for the soft services DC rates. And our current rates for water, wastewater, and roads are embedded in calculations done in 2017, adopted through a 2018 bylaw. So that bylaw, while it still has life, it certainly is long in the tooth, and while we continue to index them as permitted through the act and our bylaw, those rates we're looking forward to updating them, but it's in the context of understanding and funding our 2051 growth scenario. So at this point in time, we're still studying how and when that growth is going to take place and how and when that growth is going to be serviced and what the cost of that servicing is. Once we get further along in that process, we're getting right into the hard services DC background study and updating that. And I'm quite confident to say that you will see us climb up that chart and be much closer to the higher end of the spectrum what you're seeing today. So, and I say that because the water, wastewater, and roads DCs are a very significant portion of the town's own development charges. The soft services is, well, it's a fraction, but it's a small fraction of what the total DC is. So once we're able to get to that point in time, and I certainly hope that we're having a discussion like this within a year or so, you'll see our rates climb and then be much, as I said, I'm just going to repeat myself now, going up that spectrum in terms of comparisons. So hopefully that will help to address Councillor Giordano's concerns he just raised as well.
Mayor, quick follow-up to that then?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you, Ian. That was awesome. So is there a DC model or like a Power BI that we have that basically based on the amount of development versus the amount of DC charges in order to sustain? Do we have something like that that's calculated where you guys play with that model, where you can turn around and say, okay, well, we're not getting the development we're seeing, therefore, we can pull back on some of our capital investments or whatnot? Or is it all kind of independent studies of each other, and sometimes they work in conjunction, but they're all kind of done independently? Or do we have like this as a live model where it can be kind of played with year over year?
So there's sort of two answers to that, and that's with respect to the soft services, where there is typically council would have some discretion over the timing of when we produce and develop those growth-related projects. Should our collections be lagging, should the growth be lagging, then perhaps we don't need to build that library as quickly as we thought we would have earlier, or that new park, or that additional ice rink surface, etc. So there is some ability for council to play with the timing of delivering those growth-related capital projects. And I think Daryl mentioned it earlier, though, that we maybe don't have the same sort of luxuries or ability to modify a capital program for water, wastewater, and roads. Houses, commercial, institutional, industrial buildings can't be constructed and occupied unless we have the appropriate servicing in place for water, wastewater, and roads. So unfortunately, in those cases, we need to take the first step forward, and that's what we've been doing for the last decade or so since we put our EPA 3 in place. There's been tens of millions of dollars spent on servicing the municipality to provide for growth. So it's one of those scenarios where, to quote a movie, build it and they will come. We built it, we're waiting for them to come now.
Awesome. Thank you for your responses.
All right, I'm just going to comment. So one question for me is the comparators we used in our graphs with King, East Gwillimbury, Have they all updated their DCs? Is this where going to stay, or are they moving? Have they got their DC updates coming in the near future? Any of these communities?
I would have to go back and double check on the dates of some of these, but I know that Clearview, for example, their DC is a couple years old, like just 2024, so that was more recent. But I could go back and get the year that these were undertaken and provide that supplementary.
Yeah, if you don't mind, if you could bring that information, just out of curiosity, like to see where they are in their DC process right now. Okay, Councillor Dykey?
I think, Your Worship, you hit a good question, and that is, I'm sure some of these municipalities, especially in York Region, you have to do some major. They talked about the big pipe, and that's going to be a very expensive pipe. So I'm sure in the future, CN Watson will have to review these DCs. My question is, why is Aurelia so much cheaper than other municipalities? I know they are a separate municipality; they're not under the county, and you know we have places here under the York Region. I just wanted to know, or would you? Maybe it's an unfair question. I'm just curious why they're so much lower than other municipalities.
Yeah, so through the mayor, there can be a number of factors. First off, they could have lower service levels. And so maybe they have lower service levels, and so the infrastructure they need to accommodate the development isn't as high, so the costs are lower. One of the things as part of the background study, it's Appendix E to the background study, it's called the local service policy. And that local service policy sets out what's the developer's responsibility in the case of a subdivision, and then what goes into the DC. And different municipalities have different levels of requirements. And so they could have higher requirements on the local developers as they develop to invest in their own infrastructure and put less of the cost in the development charge calculation. So it could be a combination of those two things, but it could be some other factors as well.
And just one quick factor is the comparison chart includes all development charges, so county, education, and local development charges. The city of Aurelia, similar to the city of Barrie, is a separated city, so there are no county DC. So if there was a county, you know, to compare apples to apples, you really sort of bump Aurelia up for the amount of the county DC, but it still leaves them in a very low standing. But that's one significant difference.
We can have that conversation. Okay, thank you. Great questions. So we're going to move on then. It's so further action. Council will not make a decision on this matter tonight, but we received the 2025 soft service development charge background study for information. The matter will be referred back to staff, and the proposed bylaw will be presented to Council for consideration at September 2nd, 2025 regular Council Committee whole meeting. Comments?
Just, do we need an amendment to add the 5? Okay.
You're good with the direction you got, right? Are you okay with that? Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
I have a proposed motion that I can show for council's consideration.
Perfect. Go ahead. To add to the recommendation. Okay. So here's the proposed. So this is is this amended? Are we amending this or just a recommendation?
So this is the recommendation from the agenda. The red writing is the proposed amendment that came from the discussion on the floor.
Okay, got you. So this is the amended recommendation that the presentation titled Bradford Gwillimbury 2025 Soft Services Development Charge Background Study and Bylaw be received, and that the soft services and hard services development charge bylaw provide for a redevelopment credit for demolition and conversion of land with the following timelines, where a building permit for the redevelopment has been issued within 5 years of the date of the issuance of a permit for the demolition of any building on the same lands when the property is in one of the urban areas, and within the 10 years when the property is in the rural area. That the necessary bylaw be prepared and presented to council at the September 2nd, 2025 regular council and committee whole meeting. Are you good with that? Yeah. That gets everything you wanted in? Perfect. Okay. Yeah, move it as amendment. So Mover and a seconder, right here. Comments on the amendment? Councilor Ferragini?
So I get what we're doing because of the derelict buildings in the rural area. However, I don't understand why we have to extend the time period that is given. As Councillor Scott had said, that he doesn't even, they've been around before he was even around. So you're talking like decades. Like some of these buildings have been falling apart for 30, 40 years, and the excuse is that they don't want to hit with development charges. Well, development charges have changed drastically from then to today. Why do we give them extra time? Isn't this something like, I'm okay with the 5-year thing and say, listen, you want to take down your building, you get 5 years grace, you got to get it done within 5 years, because then that'll light a fire to actually get something done. I don't see the point of giving them even longer. And to that point, by putting in a bylaw like this, do they have to then turn around and request it to take down their building, or can they just wait 10 years, then hit this, and all of a sudden they've got another 10 years on top of that if they want to? They can just leave them standing.
Yeah, they can now leave them standing. So I know this is coming from basically some of the folks in the marsh that they want, the derelict buildings we're trying to get rid of, but they want a longer extension for forgiveness of the DCs. So they're prepared to take them down. We've been having conversations with them. They're prepared to take them down, but they want a longer extension. They actually want to go as far as 20 years. So basically take it down tomorrow. I've got 20 years or 10 years to wait. My DCs are covered for 10 years. So that's what they're trying to gain, is an extension of time for them to be able to rebuild the building without having to pay the DC for 10 years forgiveness. You want to comment on that?
Hopefully just a quick clarification that the 5 or 10 year clock starts ticking the date of a demolition permit being issued. So if they do nothing for 5 years and then take out a demolition permit, it's 5 years from now that 10-year or 5-year clock starts ticking.
Well, we're trying to convince them to take them down now. That's what we're trying to do, is gift this. So, okay, we're all good with that amendment? Okay, all in favor as amended? Can see. Okay, I see. Opposed? 2. Okay, thank you. It's carried. The amendment's carried. So now we'll vote on the motion. The motion now is the amended motion. So we still have the same mover and seconder. All in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3. Can I see the hands? 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? 1, 2. Okay, it's carried. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Move on to our next public meeting. And this is the red line revision and zoning bylaw amendment. So the introduction of the meeting. This meeting is a statutory public meeting held pursuant to Section 34 and 51 of the Planning Act. The town has received application for a red line revision and zoning bylaw amendments. These applications have been deemed complete under the Planning Act and is therefore required to hold this public meeting as part of the application review process. Members of the public will be given an opportunity to speak following the presentations. Comments presented at this public meeting are being recorded by the staff. Personal information is being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Questions regarding the collection and use of the personal information should be directed to the clerk. If a person or public body who otherwise have ability to appeal the decision of council of the town of Bradford, Gwillimbury to the Ontario Lands Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the town of Bradford, Gwillimbury before the process bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the town of Bradford before the proposed bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless the opinion of the tribunal there is reasonable grounds to do so. Okay, I will have the planning department come up and present for this one.
Good evening, councils and members of the public. Thank you for attending this evening's public meeting regarding the proposed redlining revisions and zoning bylaw amendments for 690 Simcoe Road. So on the next slide, we'll see the agenda for this evening. It'll entail the purpose of the public meeting, the posting and distribution of public notices, details regarding the subject property and application, a summary of comments, as well as concluding remarks and next steps in the process. In the next slide, you'll see the purpose of the public meeting. So as per the Planning Act, once an application is deemed complete, a public meeting is required. And the purpose of tonight's meeting is to introduce the development proposal to council as well as the public, to invite questions and seek input. Council will not be making decisions tonight. Staff will be referring back, the matter will be referred back to staff to consider as the results of the public meeting and the review of the comments received through the circulation process. Staff will then report to council with the recommendations at a later date once a comprehensive review has been taken place. Should anyone be interested in providing comments or receiving notifications regarding this file, please send an email to plan@town.bwg with your full name as well as your municipal address. On the next slide, you'll see the public notices that were posted on the property. So the sign was installed on the property by the applicant on April 4th. It is facing on Gibson Circle. And on July 14th, it was published in the Bradford Today as well as on the town website. The property owner the neighboring property owners were advised within 120 meters of the development that is taking place. On the next slide, you'll see information regarding the application. So this is a red line revisions to a zoning bylaw amendment, and what they're proposing is an increase of 13 residential lots to 16 lots. And they'll reconfigure the proposal to be for the road as well as the dead end of the cul-de-sac. They remove their future commercial block from the plan, as well they're requesting to remove the cost sharing conditions number 3 in the draft plan conditions. The application was submitted by Frank Orsi on behalf of the owner of Milford Developments in Barronville Ltd. The application was deemed complete on March 18, 2025. On the next slide, it's a bit more about the subject property. So it is located southwest of Gibson Circle and Simcoe Road, approximately 1 kilometer north of Golfview Boulevard. The property itself is about 1.51 hectares or 3.73 acres. The property itself can be seen to be divided in 2 parts, a large portion at the west and a smaller, slimmer rectangle at the east. At the west is more of a vacant and scattered vegetation, while on the east is vehicle parking. In terms of surrounding land uses or development that you can see, at the north is low density residential, while at the south and at the west is estate residential. At the east is a future development area. On the next slide, you'll see what was proposed originally in 2018. So this proposal received various extensions, where the last one was granted in February of 2025. On this proposal, you see 13 lots that are essentially placed around the cul-de-sac. Access is provided north of the subdivision for a parcel of land via Gibson Circle. And the commercial block is located at the east of the subdivision that has frontage along Simcoe Road. On the next slide is the draft plan of subdivision that is being proposed. So you can see here the changes of 3 additional lots that's been added. The configurations of the lots have also been modified to provide 11-meter frontage per lot while maintaining a single detached dwelling per lot. And there is 8 lots that is facing the east and 8 lots facing the west of the property. The road has extended to 22 meters, and the access has remained unchanged to the original plan. And the commercial future block that is located east of the property has been removed from the plan and be recognized as future development. On the next slide is a superimposition of the 2 plans that are proposed. So the black lines is the original, while the red is what is being proposed. And you can see how the realignment has differed from the 2 proposals, as well as the locations of the lots on the development. On the next slide is the cost share agreement that was identified in the draft plan agreement, where it requires the owner to enter within a developer's group agreement. So the applicant has identified that previously this reference makes to the 2002 BRG official plan. However, in the 2023 BWG official plan, that requirement has been removed, and so they request that it be removed from the requirements as well. And they identify, even though this clause will be removed, they will continue working with other parties in order to reach a resolution regarding sharing cost and so on. On the next slide, you'll see the official plan for the property. So the property itself is highlighted in red. So it's located within the Bradford urban area and designated as residential built up. And in the area itself, there are many residential use that are permitted, from low, medium, and high density residential, as well as neighborhood commercial. In the next slide is the zoning bylaw. So again, the property is highlighted in red, where currently the zone for the property is residential 1, residential 1 exception holding, as well as neighborhood commercial. So property itself permits for residential uses, and there's specific reference where the maximum garage door width limited to 3.6 meters in the lot if the lot frontage is less than 11.6 meters. So being that the proposed that of the development is not permitted, therefore a zoning bylaw amendment is required. On the next slide shows what is being requested by the applicant, which is the rezoning of the residential lots to a residential 1 exception. The lots itself provides a variety of uses again for residential and detached dwellings or other uses from private home daycares. So within the site-specific exception, they're requesting for minimum lot frontage of 11 meters, as well as that section 4.1.5 is not applied to this zone. And this is a reference to the garage opening that is restriction to frontage of 11.6. So removing that reference altogether. On the next slide, you'll see a summary of the comments received from external agencies. So in summary, Canada Post, the County of Simcoe, Enbridge, the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, as well as Rogers, had no objections regarding the proposal. For the Simcoe County District School Board, they also had no objections, but advised that students in this development might not be able to attend the local school, as well as for South Lake Health, they identified also that they have no objections, but they wanted to request council's continuous support to promote fundraising, as well as seeking funding approvals to help with the growing population. On the next slide, you'll see the comments received from the town departments. In summary, fire, finance, infrastructure, facility, and parks division did not have any objections to what was being proposed. Comments were received also from development engineer to identify the items will be addressed within a detailed design stage, and no public comments were received to date regarding this application. So in the next slide, just to close, so for the members of the public who would like to comment regarding this application or to receive further notification, please do send an email to plan@townofbwg.com. The owner's agent, or Mr. Orsi, is in attendance this evening to answer any questions that council may have regarding this application. At this point, I would like to invite him over, introduce himself, as well as add any comments. Following this, the floor will be open to questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Priscilla, for that presentation. So I can now welcome up the applicant and the representative if they'd like to provide any additional details of the proposal. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Frank Orsi, and first I'd like to thank Mrs. Land for doing the heavy lifting for me. I'd just like to speak to a few graphics I have this evening, and then I'll be happy to listen to your comments or questions. So just looking at the first graphic we have here, at first glance, you can see that this area is a family-friendly residential area. To the northwest, we have a park. To the east, we have a school. And to the southeast, we have another school. I just want to highlight this school in the southeast. you see it backing on to the estate residential. And as this school also fronts Catherine Court, all we have on that side is a chain link fence. Next slide, please. So this is a comparison of the two draft plans. You can see the original one is the 13 lots in the background, and our new mousetrap is the red. There's a lot of red, it looks confusing, but there's fundamentally two changes. We're changing the configuration of the draft plan, if you can see by the road, and we're changing the lot size. So why are we changing the fabric? Firstly, we're creating uniform square lots, and that's very important. Before we had the Noah's Ark of planning, we had 2 of every lot, pie shape. It was not efficient for any builder to pick this up. Everybody said we need to have uniformity to make efficient building when we only have such a small project. The next thing we'll notice, even though we're extending the right-of-way, there's less asphalt and therefore less impervious area. So we get benefits all the way around. If you look at the bulb to the south, you'll notice that we do not bring the bulb to the property line that we have. We leave about a 9-meter buffer. This gives buffer from the streets, from the existing Gulfview Boulevard lots. You can't really see it on this slide, but as right to the south of that boundary, you'll see a yellow line. That is a storm easement. It's existing on title. We consider that to be a buffer zone as well. So when you add that yellow line, it's about a 3-meter easement, along with the buffer zone we're giving, you see how we're really having a setback from the future roadway. Because if you can see in the pink for these houses, it's not showing up in the slide very well here, but on my graphic, the house is set back about 47 meters to 67 meters. So these backyards are very, very long. So the last change you'll see, it goes back to the configuration. Before we had the 4 lots of the existing Gulfview Boulevard backing onto 4 lots onto the existing draft plan. Now we're only going to have 2 proposed lots backing onto this existing Gulfview Boulevard. Given that there's only about 7% of openings on a building side, we think it's better for privacy and better for enjoyment of amenity areas. And if we look at grade, next slide please. You can see the existing Gulfview is situated much higher than our proposed grade. So again, the amenity area of the existing Gulfview Boulevard is not going to be affected by the proposed development. So when we come to lot size, compatibility does not mean the same. So the question is, what is the correct amount of lots that we can fit here? So if it's 11.6, we'd be with 7. We're asking for 11 meters to get to 8 units on each side of the road. I think this is minor in nature, and even though it may be small in that sense, it's a big impact for the project because we have so many fixed costs to deal with. Every extra unit helps spread that fixed cost over those costs. And at the same time, all detached houses in this town pay the same DC rate. So the town picks up 2 new DCs, or 3 new DCs going from 13 to 16, even though no extra infrastructure is being required. Everything is already installed surrounding this development. And as you just heard, we want to put as much density in this town as possible because DCs are only going up and very expensive. Next slide, please. So this graphic here shows the orientation of the driveways. You can see that there's going to be plenty of room for on-street parking as well as off-street parking. Each driveway will easily be able to fit 4 cars, and if the builder wants to situate the house differently, that's up to him. But you can see there's also plenty of amenity space, and at the same time, I don't see the impacts on the existing Gulfview Boulevard. Next slide, please. So what does a 36-foot lot look like? Not to name this street specifically, but these are 8 houses in a row that are 36 feet. Garage is a little bit wider with the way people do their landscaping after they move in. And so for this private enclave, although this is public realm in a collector corridor, you'd probably expect to see the same type of facades and architecture and urban design within the small 16-lot enclave, 8 units on each side. So in short, this development will infill within the existing settlement boundary of Bradford. It promotes the existing use of town infrastructure, and at the same time, we're providing smaller, more attainable lots for families instead of the larger premium 50-foot lots, the 36 product. It's part of shrinkflation where the costs are only going up, families can't afford it. The best we can do is make smaller units and put families in there. And whether it's 13 or whether we're talking about 14 or 16, we think this change is minor in nature. So I'm looking forward to hearing comments, and I can answer questions afterwards. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Appreciate that. It's now time for the public participation. So members of the public are now invited to address council and provide any comments. Please provide your name and speak directly into the microphone. If residents have prepared a written submission that they are reading from, please submit it to the clerk upon completion of your presentation. Planning staff, the applicants, the representatives are, okay, so we've got that. I'll stop there. So we have some people that signed up, so I'll call them up first, and then if there's others that came after and wanted to comment, I'll put a call out for that. So right first, I have Emilio and Susan Coluca. Did I get it right? Coluca?
Yes, this is on. Hello, my name's Emilio Coluca. I am in agreement with the development if it is kept to the estate zoning standards, which looks like it is. And I was concerned with the drainage, and it sounds like the buffer area is going to be the drainage now, from what I just saw. I didn't see the drawing before. So the only other thing I would like the developer the builder to do is to pay and provide the fence in case there's a fence. So I don't know how that buffer area works. So that's my question.
Okay, so provide a fence at the buffer area, you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. We'll have the developer come up after, if that's all you have. We'll have the developer come after and respond to those if he can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up I have Mike Augusta. No, I'm sorry, he didn't. Albert Waringa.
Could I have the map of the housing that you had up just a moment ago? Frank put it up, and you guys had it up too. Could I have that map?
Albert, can you just speak into the mic, and then everybody can hear what you're asking for, including the people that are.
I think they can hear me without the mic, but anyway.
It's the YouTube people that can't hear you. It's the YouTube people, Albert.
It's the old Dissette voice. Anyway.
There you go.
All right, I may have to walk then. No, not that one. That's a very nice picture, by the way. The development with the houses and the water hole and the nice strip. Yeah, that will do. That will do very nicely. Thank you very much. Lovely development as it has been presented. However, I must say that, one, it is wrong, and I'll explain. And two, it is hasty. Because what you're doing right now is you're cramming the houses in a very small space, which could be developed quite differently and sit much better in that area of the residential area. First of all, history. I'm the only one left on Gulfview who came there originally. So I was there in 91. I've been there for 34 years. We were promised that was a green space. Now I know what happened between council here and between Green Valley. I also know Mr. Orsi was very kind in offering it for a very small amount to the town, which was refused at that time. However, that area has always been a water catchment area. That's what it was designed to do, and that's what it should do. Now, with the development you have north of there, we already have a problem because the percolation of water that used to be on the farm and on the golf course, made sure that our aquifer had enough water in it. That is no longer the case at times, and I want to show you something. Could you have the map, please, that shows the house on Goldview?
Albert. Albert. if you could just come and sit here and ask them for the maps, and because nobody can hear you, like you're also on YouTube, and the public would love to hear this, just in case you'd like to comment on.
All right. Could I have the map, please? You had earlier the schematic. Lovely. And now I'll have to go in because I want to show you something. I happen to live here, and have been for the last 34 years. Right here, David and Zena are living, and I'm also here for them because they couldn't come tonight. We, in the last 3 years, ever since the development, the bigger development, have had water problems. Spitting of sand. So has house number 1 here, Goldfield. Spitting of sand. Our wells are affected by what you have right there. Not only that, right here across ours, also recently. Here. I got one here. Oh, lovely. And so, okay, yeah, it's going to fall apart, right? Okay, so I have a worry about water. The percolation problem is different. Yes, we still at certain time have extra water in this area right here and in that area right there, which was there when the development went up 34 years ago. However, we are the highest point here, as was pointed out by Frank too. And there's quite a high difference between here and there. And so I worry about water, so who's guaranteed that our wells will not go bad? And if they go bad,
Can you guys hear me there?
who will pay for that?
Hello? Can you guys hear me? Albert, you're speaking right to the mic. It's completely distorted, and all we hear is absolute distortion. So you got to back the mic up. Nothing's coming through.
Not used to talking in a mic. Anyway.
There you go.
All right, we'll keep it a little bit lower and we'll see what happens. And so we were, a couple of years ago, we were offered to have water and septic because we are on our own systems right here. And they put in, at Gulfview right here, they put a header on the pipes that were laid at that particular time. However, we were giving a bill at that time. We could choose to do it and pay $35,000 or more to be hooked up to water and to septic. Since you guys are messing around with our water in the bottom layers where our aquifers are, will the town pick this up, the $35,000, when eventually we, maybe not I because I'll be on the ground, but will you actually pay for that? Or who will pay for that? Or are you going to charge these people all after they've had very functioning water, actually excellent water, and septic system, and will you charge them? Now, I know you guys are under pressure to put housing down, and okay, you accommodate very nicely, and so I understand all that. And that's why I say, if somehow these people cannot be compensated for losing what they have, with whatever, so that person, these people right here, because they all have things that are here. The water right now that used to be sinking down is now coming fast, running, and running straight out. Is not being retained. So we are losing something. We definitely are. We're losing the view. We're losing some of the animals. So when you say it doesn't affect us, of course it does affect us. Now, in a civil country, you get compensation for these people because they've lost something. You've taken something. So who's going to do that? The developer? Council? Is it going to affect our taxes? I wish, you guys make a commitment. If you cannot do that, and if you want to go ahead, then this development is still way too hasty. You're crowding the houses in right there. Right now, you have a lovely dead end.
You come back and sit here. We've seen the whole map and everything.
Whew, there we are. All right. If you took the two lots, and a little birdie told me one of the lots was sold recently, the two lots north of that strip of land, you could make an excellent road right in the middle, 2 lanes, tree lined, and on the top line you could put at least 20, 25 houses. At the bottom you could put 25 houses. you'd have 50 houses in that whole development right there. And so it's way too hasty. If only you have that land, yeah, the strip you can't use, yeah, for development. If you had their 2 lots right there, buy them out, then you could set a development up. So 1, it's wrong, and 2, it's hasty. And so I wish you would consider that and run with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Colorful. All right, thank you. Next up, I have Laurie Park.
Good evening. I'm Laurie Park, and can I have that map back up?
Last map that he just had on the.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you put that map back up?
Okay. So my question is the yellow strip that goes along, how wide, what's the depth of that?
How wide is it? Okay, he'll answer that, but he did give
Okay.
it.
Oh, he did? Okay. And I have the easement between my property and my neighbor's property for the water drainage that comes from Gulfview. My backyard is, the back half of it is completely saturated 99% of the time, like it is right now. It's the only green grass I have. So I'm wondering will the storm sewer stay between our 2 properties, or will it be removed if this fancy new water drainage system is put in? And if so, can I have that land back? Because I can't do anything with it with the big pipe right there. And I'm just wondering how that water, how it will affect my property at the back, because it does go down quite a steady hill, and how it will affect the soppiness. I mean, it would be great if it was gone, but my concern is I do have a fence that I had installed recently, and I think I have another 10 or so feet there. Will I be permitted to then move the fence line, I guess? That's
property. Your property. You can move
I
the
know,
fence line.
okay. Well, I guess, yeah, my concern is mostly the water, the easement between the 2 properties.
Okay, so we'll have your questions answered by our staff or the applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. So I'll put a call out. I'll call it the second call for anybody that wants to make public comment on this application at 690 Simcoe Road. And I'll put a third call out for anybody that would like to make comment on this application for 690 Simcoe Road. Okay, seeing none at this time, I will have the applicant or Priscilla, who would like to come up and answer the questions that were posed by the residents. We have 2 questions from Laurie, and then comments by Albert will be covered in the application. But we have 2 questions. She talked about the width of the easement, or the buffer you have. It's 3 meters, correct? Frank, are you coming up? That's your call. Yeah, I know. We're just going to get these done.
I'm sorry, I did not catch the deputy's name, but I think we're starting off with the 3-meter strip. Was that it? Alongside the north edge of those lots, there's an instrument that's registered on title that allows for a 3-meter drainage easement. It's in the subdivision agreement, and there's a reference plan that identifies the location of this easement. You own the lot. There's just a drainage easement across, so you have very limited uses what you can do within that easement. But yes, you certainly do own it. For other questions, if perhaps you could help me out, Mr. Mayor, which...
The second question was about the easement along her property line.
Yes, the other easement. There is a storm pipe that goes from Catherine Court adjacent to the 2 houses. Its direction would be north-south and ends in a head wall. Nothing changes between those 2 houses. We pick up those flows in our design and we convey them accordingly. So from the perspective of those two homeowners, nothing changes. From downstream, we do pick it up into sewers or overland flows, and we convey them accordingly to the detailed design, which will be further investigated as we move the process along.
Okay. Thank you. So Laurie, those answered, are you okay with those two answers for your question? Your two?
Yes.
That's, yeah. He replied to that. He told you it doesn't change. And then the meter, the buffered meter is 3 meters. Okay. Okay. It's now council's opportunity to ask questions. So I have Deputy Mayor and I have Councilor Giordano. Your hand is up for this? Okay. And then Councilor Kite. Pardon? Oh, the fence. Her fence? No, the buffer fence. Oh, the buffer fence. Sorry. Oh, yes, the buffer fence. Right, right. There was a question by one of the residents, I'm sorry, by Emilio, about putting a fence up along the buffer zone.
I'll take that under consideration at this time.
Excellent. Okay, Emilio, it's under consideration. It'll be part of the report. So it's part of what we go back and forth with the developer. So, okay.
Different kinds of trees, instead of just a cheap little wiring material?
Like, he'll take it under consideration. We'll figure out what to do there. It's within the minutes. It's within the public planning meeting session right now. So it's been documented by our staff, and they'll work with the developer to provide the, if there's an opportunity to provide that, it'll be through that process. What's been documented. Okay. We'll go on to councilors. I had Councillor Deputy Mayor Sandu, I have Councillor Giordano, and then Councillor Verkuyk and Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. Land, Mr. Orsi, and the residents that shared their comments and concerns and questions. One question I had was the rationale of increasing 13 to 16 unit, and Mr. Orsi answered it for me when he spoke. He said every extra unit helps with the fixed costs. So I kind of get my answer. But what does that get us? The 3 extra units in the same fabric of the lot is going to get us extra parking issues, extra traffic issues. And the circle, is it enough for the fire trucks or other EMS to maneuver? The other question I have is this council has been promoting active lifestyle and mixed-use neighborhoods. By taking out that commercial zone, we're totally going the opposite. Now we're having people go in their vehicles to go even get milk or something. I don't agree with taking out the commercial block. I do have concern with extra 3 lots. Those are not my questions, those are just the comments. I will wait for my report when it comes back to put my further thoughts into it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, if I could just clarify one thing. This whole subject property is already within a registered plan as subdivision. When I remove the commercial block, the zoning for it stays. The only thing I'm now focusing this draft plan on is these 16 units. When this plan gets registered, by virtue of that registration, the commercial block will exist as its own block. It won't have a very nice and neat legal description. Instead of having block 17 on plan 51M XXX, it'll be part of block 31, 51M4. So that's the only difference in that it's just a technical reason to remove it. I'll stop at that if you don't need your other answers. Or don't need the other questions answered at this time.
Just a follow-up or a supplement to that, and I respect that. Changing that technical block name to whatever, to future development, opens it up in the future to take it away. I'll leave it at that. As I said, that I will reserve my comments and how I'm going to vote when the report actually comes. This is a public meeting for the public to give their thoughts, but right now, that's where I am.
Okay, thank you. And I think you had some questions, concerns about the bulb, right, being large enough. So it'll be commented in the report, so staff can comment on that after. Okay, I've got Councillor Giordano next, and then Councillor Verkuyk, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, thank you. So here's a bit of the challenge that I have. So, you know, when you look at a lot of the applications we're getting lately, it's super density that we're getting, and there's still a large demand, especially for people looking to move to Bradford for those single detached homes with some property. This application does deliver on that. You know, again, when you look at the estate homes that it backs onto, I did prefer the original design, given the fact that it's backyard to backyard connections versus a backyard to a side of a house that somebody will be staring at. I feel like that gives it a little bit more of a natural buffer. The lots, pie shaped lots at the back, usually larger lots. People end up putting pools or, you know, enhanced landscaping. So I believe that it integrates into those estate homes a lot more. A lot more effectively. Having 36-foot lots, because I was doing the quick math, so 11-meter lots, 36 even lots, it's more of a cookie cutter subdivision as opposed, and you're optimizing your space. I get it. A little less character than, you know, maybe having those pie-shaped wide lots that allow for some interesting, and even bungalows. There's a lot of people that are looking for bungalows, especially people that do have the financial means in town that would like to retire or to have a single floor or a raised bungalow unit. So I know as a businessman or as a, you know, as a business, you're looking at how to optimize. I do have neighbors that are beside me with a couple of beautiful 36-foot lots that integrate well with 40-foot lots and 50-foot lots in the subdivision. So we aren't getting that mass density. So I do appreciate that, because I do feel that this alternative does somewhat integrate. I just preferred the initial design. I believe that it integrated a little bit more, but I understand your reasonings for it. Um, the concerns that the neighbors had are my concerns as well. You know, when you look at water drainage and you look at as soon as you have a mass subdivision, or that's not mass, but as soon as you have a subdivision below it, you will have the water, the natural water, the runoff, and you will be digging down. So how that affects the water, how that affects the drainage. When you're on septic and you're on well water, or sorry, are those homes on well water, or are they on town water and just septic? I don't exactly recall. I believe they were on well, but I may be wrong. I think they may have been serviced. But long story short, I just want to make sure that everything is addressed properly when it comes to however we can maximize their backyard usage, right? So they're used to having nothing there. I understand some developments would take place, but it's having that hard fence and that hard side of the building that is backing into, you know, people's backyards. To me, is a little bit harsher than having a backyard backing onto a backyard. So I did prefer the initial design, but I do appreciate the fact that you're coming with single detached homes. It does integrate to the area better, and the DC charges, the additional 3 lots. Again, I prefer the larger lots with the other configuration, but those extra 3 lots do add additional, I guess, DC charges to us, and it's an additional 3 homes that'll be contributing to the tax base. So it does help a little bit. So it's more comments than anything else. I don't know if you can maybe explain or just, you know, double down on anything that I actually brought up, if that's the time, or do we wait for the final report to come back? But those are my concerns, and that was my overall thought process. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Giordano, just to clarify, yes, they are well, they are well serviced. It was part of Albert's concerns was about who's going to provide the water services that are the stub at Simcoe Road is there. So just to clarify that. On to Councillor Kike.
Yeah, I too have the exact same concerns as the deputy mayor regarding the change in that long rectangular piece off of Simcoe Road. And I just feel why are we changing that part of it when it has nothing to do with the 16 or 13 homes? It seems kind of like a sleight of hand, like, watch this and I'm going to change this. So I have questions for staff. Why is this changed, and what are the implications, and what are the adjoining long strips? What are they zoned as? And I know that we had the same issue on 6th Line in Green Valley. We had that a larger commercial area that the because at one point in time, they got permission to put housing there. We were going to lose the OLT, and it just, we need commercial throughout the town. We just can't have commercial on Allen Street. So I want to ask staff to expand on that.
Copper Manager of Growth Services. Manager of Planning, sorry, Alan Weep.
Sure thing. Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Verkuyk. Where the commercial portion has previously been included in the draft plan of subdivision and still is included to present day, should the plan in its current form proceed to final approval and registration, as Mr. Orsi had pointed out, that would be a block on a registered plan of subdivision. Block X on plan, whatever plan of subdivision number, that would be part of the legal description, and it would come with its certain opportunities, for instance, with the potential for future condominium registration. Common element condominium has to be registered on a one or more lots or blocks on a registered plan of subdivision, as an example. The inclusion of that block in the draft plan also affords council the opportunity to impose and relate to it certain conditions of the draft plan of subdivision approval. I'm unfamiliar with any specific conditions in the current approval that are linked to that commercial block. However, the proposal to now exclude that area of land from the area affected by the draft plan would remove council's opportunity from imposing conditions of draft plan approval on that specific area of land. Now that said, subject to what development proposal those lands may be subject to in the future, there may be that future opportunity to link certain requirements to it based on what's being proposed. If it's proposed as part of a draft plan, that would provide a new opportunity to impose new conditions related to that area. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, you okay?
So, in one or two sentences, what's changed? What's the difference between future commercial and future development? Or is there any difference?
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Verkuyk. The short answer would be, for the purpose of labels on a draft plan, no real difference. The zoning that applies to the lands is what would identify what the lands can and can't be used for. But the labeling on the draft plan would not have a direct impact on that. It's merely a reflection of what's proposed or in effect.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Scott?
Thank you for everyone who presented. A couple of things. I think a wooden privacy fence between existing homes and new homes is a pretty routine thing to provide, and so I would echo the residents who requested that. I also think the concerns about water at the rear of these properties, it's probably something that you have to address anyway in the development, Mr. Orsi, so I would just encourage everyone to take a close look at that, because it's obviously something that was raised by multiple residents tonight, and giving them some peace of mind that you will consider it and have a solution makes sense to everyone, and I'd like to see that happen when this comes back. So we're not making a decision tonight, but those two things from the residents seem like reasonable standard requests that I'd like to see addressed in the future report. I will admit that I'm a little confused by how the two homes at the bottom of the bulb of the court are situated. I think I agree with Councillor Giordano that a pie-shaped lot just intuitively made more sense to me. I grew up on a pie-shaped lot on a court, and I don't understand exactly entering a driveway, swinging around, how the house is going to be aligned. So I'd like to see more detail about that in the final report. And then finally, I'll actually ask this as a question to Mr. Weeb. The report says the future commercial block at the eastern section of the property, block 17, is proposed to be removed from the draft plan and recognized as future development. I had understood that future development could be either commercial or residential, so is the intention to preserve that optionality by changing it to future development, or could it only be commercial just designated as future development? I think that's what Councillor Verkuyk was asking, and I'm still confused.
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Councillor Scott. Sorry, I meant to inquire as to whether Council may wish for Mr. Orsi to speak to the matter of fencing and driveway before the labeling on the draft plan.
No, I'm fine. He said he'd take it under advisement. I'm encouraging him to advise that he's going to do it.
Thank you. Through Your Worship to Councillor Scott. If I recall correctly, I believe the area of land, and Mr. Orsi may correct me, I believe the area of land that would be excluded, future development or future commercial, if I recall correctly, I believe it's currently zoned C2, neighborhood commercial. So C2 with a holding provision. Thank you, Mr. Orsi. And so the zoning would provide the neighborhood commercial permissions, land use permissions. Whether it is labeled as future commercial or future development, I would be inclined to characterize those as the same, given of the same effect, given that the neighborhood commercial zoning already bestows on that area of land neighborhood commercial use permissions. So whether it's labeled as future commercial or future development, I would interpret that for the draft plan purpose as one and the same, given that zoning directs what it would be used for.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, and the rest we can get into in the future report, and I look forward to seeing those responses.
Next, I have Councillor Dykey.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation tonight. And I want to thank the residents for taking the time. And this particular piece of property has been there for quite a while, and this application's been on the books, off the books, on the books. So I'm glad that everybody came tonight and spoke up about the fence, the drainage, because that is a nice pocket of municipality. I had the opportunity one time to live on that street, so that is a nice area of town, and I hope that that this cul-de-sac blends into the area, and that the fence can be created, a wooden fence, because it can be done right. But I don't recall, and I have to discuss this with Albert at a time when back when I was there in 2009, and I never recalled, and I encouraged that the town had the opportunity to have a stub on Simcoe Road for future water. That I never recalled the estimate ever given to the residents on Gulfview. I've never recalled that. Maybe I'm wrong, but at the end of the day, what puzzles me is that particular subdivision, maybe now on Simcoe Road, there's a fire hydrant. I know when I lived there, I had a hard time getting insurance. So I would hope that by this development, that this fire hydrants are in the area that could be beneficial for that whole area. So just wanted to bring that up. So. But thank you for everybody presenting tonight.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. That estimate was to the Simcoe Road people. 35,000 was to them. That's when we put that in way back. That was to them. Gulfview would be much different because you have to bring the pipe up from Simcoe Road. The stub's there, but the pipe's not. So, okay, so we have no more questions or concerns, so we'll move on. Council will not make a decision on this matter tonight, but we received the staff report for information. The matter referred back to staff for a further recommendation report at a later date. Recommendation that report PLN 2025-39 regarding public information meeting application for red line revision and changes to the conditions of approval D12-25-2 and zoning bylaw amendment D14-25-2 for the lands known as 690 Simcoe Road and legally described as Plan M423 Block 31 be received, and that the comments received in writing and or made at the public meeting be received, and that the Office of Community Planning consider the matters raised and address the same in its future report. So, mover and seconder, please put this. Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Verkuyk. Seeing no questions, all in favor? Carried, thank you. We're on to our final public meeting for tonight, and that is the application zoning bylaw amendment. Owner applicant Joseph Lano, municipal address 4264, line 8, 3291 County Road 27, planning file number D14-25-01, zoning bylaw. Planning staff will now present the contents of the staff report. Please note that the staff report being presented pertains to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The presentation by staff will contain an update on comments received to date and does not include a recommendation on the proposal. Town staff will provide a report at a later date, which will also reflect and consider the public's comments made during this public meeting and written submissions received before the report is written. Priscilla, back to you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening again. I'm council as well as member of the public. Thank you for attending the meeting for the property at 4264 line 8 as well as 3291 on County Road 27 for a zoning bylaw amendment. So again, I'm just going to go over what will be discussed at this meeting, which includes the purpose of the public meeting, the posting and distribution of public notices, details regarding a subject property, a summary of the comments received, as well as the next steps in the process for this application. So on the next slide, you'll see the purpose of the public meeting. So as a requirement of the Planning Act, the application, once deemed complete, requires to have a public information meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to provide information to council as well as the public, to invite questions as well as to seek input regarding the development. Council will not be making a decision tonight, and once this matter will be referred back to staff to consider as a result of the public meeting, as well as a review of the comments through the circulation process. Staff will then report back to council regarding a recommendation at a later date. Should anyone be interested in providing comments regarding this application or to receive future updates, please send an email to plan@town.bwg with your full name as well as your address. On the next slide, you'll see information regarding the public notice. So it is a process that is regulated by the Planning Act. Signage was erected on the property facing Line 8 as well as County Road 27 on May 27th. It was published in the Bradford Today as well as the town website on May 13, 2025. In terms of notice distributed to neighboring properties, the minimum of 20 meters was circulated. Notice was circulated above the 120 meter requirement in order to provide information to 30 properties surrounding this application. In terms of the application itself, you'll see on the the other slide, that they're proposing for one event venue, which is the conversion of an existing two-story barn, the addition of 110 parking spaces, inclusion of a temporary food truck area, a washroom outbuilding, and the event venue itself will be accessed via Line 8 on an existing driveway. The application was submitted by Powell Planning and Associates on behalf of the owner Joseph Lano, and the application was deemed complete on April 29th of 2025. On the next slide, you'll see information regarding the subject property. The property itself is outlined in red and is located about 90 meters east at the intersection of County Road 27 and Line 8. The site is approximately 37.3 hectares or 92 acres. It is primarily considered as farmland. It has 2 dwellings and 3 ancillary buildings. In terms of the surrounding properties, it's primarily agricultural lands. On the next slide, you'll see what they're proposing for the area. So the slide shows 2 areas. So one is an overview, and then our part at the left is a close-up. At the top right, outlined in purple, is the location of the 2-story barn. So this will be the location of the events venue. Southeast of this would be the outbuilding, and directly south would be the temporary location for the food truck. If you follow the line around the road, you'll see another purple rectangle, which is the location for the 110 parking spaces. And if you continue down the line, it would lead to the entrance to the property and to Line 8. So on the next slide is the location of the property in terms of the official plan. So the property, again, is outlined in red. It's located outside the Bradford urban area within agricultural land, and it permits a range of uses, which includes agricultural uses, agriculture-related uses, as well as on-farm diversified uses. On the next slide, you'll see the zoning information, where the land itself is primarily designated as agricultural. It also has a segment that is considered as environmental protection. Environmental protection has permitted uses such as agricultural and conservation. It is more limited in nature, while the agriculturals have additional uses such as bed and breakfast establishment. The proposed development is not permitted, and that is why they're pursuing a zoning bylaw amendment for the proposal. On the next slide is more details regarding the requested rezoning, where they're proposing to rezone the segment of the land southeast bordered by the environmental protected land. So again, the agricultural zone permits for a variety of agricultural uses, where they would require a zoning bylaw amendment in order to obtain the events barn that they're proposing. On the next slides are the comments that were received to date from external agencies. So starting comments were received from Bell, Enbridge, as well as Rogers. In terms of the County of Simcoe, they identified that the size limitation of the on-farm diversified uses and the proposal should be reflected accordingly. The Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority identified that the road widening would encroach on the natural hazard on site and safe access will need to be demonstrated. In terms of the comments from town staff, which will be seen on the next page. So fire and emergency services, infrastructure, parks, as well as legal, risk management, and procurement identified no objections. Comments were received also from capital engineering, clerks, and development engineering, identifying comments regarding or clarifications regarding road widening, accessibility requirements, parking, and functional servicing. Comments were also received from enforcement, identifying that there was ongoing investigation regarding non-compliance, and finance identified outstanding taxes on the property. At the time the presentation was prepared, one comment was received regarding positive comments regarding the development, advising that it supports creation of new business. Since that time, a letter of support was also received from 10 neighboring individuals. And lastly, just to close on the last slide, so for anyone who wished to provide comments regarding this application, do send in comments to plan@townofbwg. The owner's agent is in attendance this evening, will be able to answer any questions you may have. At this time, I'll invite Carly Murphy of Powell Planning and Associates to introduce herself and to add any comments. Following, the floor will be open again to questions to council. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We'll invite the applicant up then. Thank you for that, Priscilla.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Carly Murphy, and I'm a planner with Powell Planning and Associates, who is retained by the landowner of 4264 Line 8 and 3291 County Road 27 to evaluate the merits of a zoning bylaw amendment application to the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. This presentation will provide an overview of the site as well as the proposed amendment. It'll provide a brief summary of the comprehensive policy analysis that was undertaken for the application, as well as concluding remarks. So the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment application is to seek planning approval to permit the conversion of an as-built two-story barn into an events venue as an on-farm diversified use on the subject property in accordance with provincial and municipal policies. Next slide, please. So as previously mentioned, the subject lands are designated agricultural and they're zoned agricultural and environmental protection zone. There are 2 existing single detached dwellings on the lot, a shed and 2 barns, one of which is proposed for the conversion to the events venue. And the surrounding land uses are agricultural, some residential uses, and commercial uses as well. Next slide, please. The proposed on-farm diversified use is secondary to the principal use of, or the principal agricultural use of the subject property, which is a registered farm for the raising of animals for food as well as growing crops. An on-farm diversified use is a permitted use of the agricultural designation, and the subject application seeks to add the events venue as a site-specific permitted use through the zoning bylaw amendment. Next slide, please. So a comprehensive policy analysis of applicable planning legislation was undertaken, and this includes the guidelines on Ontario or on permitted uses in Ontario's prime agricultural areas as well. Next slide, please. The subject application has regard for provincial interest under the Planning Act, as it does not propose to take any lands out of the agricultural system. The subject use doesn't encroach into the environmental protection zone and continues to protect the ecological systems, and the events venue will contribute to diverse economic and employment opportunities that's supportive of the agricultural system today. Next slide, please. The subject application is consistent with the PPS that encourages the addition of diversified uses to agricultural while protecting agricultural lands and environmental features and functions. The subject application will continue to support healthy, integrated, and viable rural areas within the town and promotes the preservation and enhanced use of the agricultural system, supported by the policies of the PPS and further implemented by the OMAFRA guidelines. Next slide, please. It's my professional planning opinion that the subject application well satisfies the direction provided in the OMAFRA guidelines for agricultural lands, meets the criteria for permitting on-farm diversified uses, and represents good planning. As supported by the criteria, the proposed events venue is located on a farm property and again is secondary to the principal agricultural use of the property. It makes use of an existing barn on the subject lands that's not required to support the agricultural production of the lands. It's limited in area, and the proposed use is compatible with and does not hinder surrounding agricultural operations. I do want to make note that on the slide, we have identified 0.087% of the areas taken out of the subject lands for the on-farm diversified use. Since this presentation was prepared and the planning justification report was prepared, we did do some further assessment of the calculations of the on-farm diversified uses of the subject site and updated the site plan to outline the data in a table. And this number is brought to 1.25%, which is still keeping within the recommended 2% of the OMAFRA guidelines. Next slide, please. In conformity with the Simcoe County Official Plan, the subject lands are protected for long-term agricultural use by remaining to keep them within the agricultural designation, while the proposed on-farm diversified use contributes to diverse economic opportunities within the county. The proposed use will maintain the required setbacks necessary to ensure that any adverse impacts on the agricultural area and natural heritage system are minimized. Next slide, please. The official plan further sets out criteria for new on-farm diversified uses that are already consistent with the provincial and county policies. The proposed events venue meets the criteria for an on-farm diversified use as discussed, and it can be permitted through a site-specific permitted use of the agricultural zone through an amendment to the zoning bylaw in conformity with the policies of the official plan. Next slide, please. This zoning bylaw amendment application is being brought forward specifically to ensure compliance in accordance with the existing direction of the official plan for permitting on-farm diversified uses. The subject zoning bylaw amendment application is required to provide a site-specific exception to the agricultural zone and permit the proposed events venue on the subject lands. All other standards, including setback, lot coverage, building height, and parking requirements within the zoning bylaw, are complied with. Next slide, please. A careful analysis concludes that the application is supported by provincial and municipal policy direction, as the subject application again continues to protect agricultural resources by maintaining the property within the agricultural designation. It does not have any negative impacts on surrounding agricultural uses or the agricultural viability of the lands for future agricultural needs, and does not pose public health or safety concerns. The subject application is consistent with the criteria for on-farm diversified uses as provided by the PPS, the OMAFRA guidelines, the official plan for the County of Simcoe, the town's official plan, and enhances the uses of the agricultural system. The subject application respects the standards of the agricultural zone and represents good planning in accordance with the best interest of the public. Next slide, please. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. We'll we'll welcome the public up now if they want to participate. So, excuse me, members of the public are now invited to address council and provide any comments. Please provide your name and speak directly into the microphone. If residents have prepared a written submission that they are reading from, please submit it to the clerk upon completion of a presentation. Planning staff, the applicant, and the representative are now invited. Okay, forget that part. I keep reading that for nothing. All right, so I do have a list of people here that want to speak. So I'll start with that. I have Cassie Hilliard.
Hello, Council. I'm here tonight to speak in full support of the zoning approval for Chestnut Creek venue here in Bradford. The owners, Joe and his daughter Mel, have an unwavering supporter of this community. They have generously opened their doors and their hearts for countless fundraisers, not only for my work with WOW Living, but also for my personal initiatives to help local families and causes in need. Their dedication goes beyond business. It's a genuine commitment to making Bradford stronger, more connected, and more compassionate. Joe and Mel are true assets to this town, and their venue has already proven to be a place where community happens. Granting them the zoning approval would not only benefit just the business, it would benefit Bradford as a whole. And I urge you to recognize their contributions and approve Chestnut Creek zoning approval request. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next up, I have Joe Lano. You're gonna, yeah, okay. You're not speaking for you're not speaking for yourself. All right. Next up, I have Mr. Golaski. Golaski. You're good. Okay, perfect. So I will now make it. If somebody wants to come up and speak, a second call for public participation. Third call for public participation. Okay, seeing none, we'll now move on to council. I'll open the floor up for council. So I have Councillor Giordano first. Go ahead. And I got
Awesome.
Councillor Harper and then Councillor Verkuyk.
Yeah, so this is an interesting application because this council has heard from numerous residents time and time again that protecting our agricultural land is absolutely paramount for many of us. We visited this property a few years ago, and it's absolutely stunning. The work that they've done, the barn itself, and how it's been converted. It truly is a gem. But at the same time, I need to have some more time to dig into the due diligence on what we're doing here when it comes to the zoning application. There is a consideration for what does this do for other properties, and do we start setting a precedent when it comes to how this agricultural property starts getting slowly commercialized? And I appreciate the owners and the venue itself. Like I said, it's stunning. But I look to the staff to give us all those different types of scenarios on what we can do, what we should do, and what's consistent with what we've done in the past. That's my comments for now.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is for staff. In regards to this 18% versus the 2% or 1 point, however many percent the consultant said there, could you explain to me on slide 7? We have the subject lands as the whole property, and then the purple part, which is basically where the parking is situated, and the purple part where the 2-story assembly hall will be. What is the 2% versus the 18% that the I forget what his name was, that was representing them? What is that representing? This 18% or 2%?
Priscilla or Alan, would you like to come respond to that?
And then I have another question after this.
Yep, we'll just have her respond to that question first.
For your worship, Mr. Counselor, so the purple shows the area in which will be converted. So the top right of that drawing that you're referencing is the conversion of the barn to the events venue. And then the bottom purple is the parking lot, so the 110 parking spaces. In the calculation, when you go to unfarmed diversified use, there's a limitation that says 2% of the entire property. So the area that they identified would be less than 2%.
So in their application, they've already reduced it. It's basically what the representative was saying. So it'll only be limited to those two pieces that are in purple on slide 7. Is that what we should be looking at?
For you, Mr. Worship, so in terms of what will be affected with the events venue, so everything associated to it. So they also mentioned a parking location for a truck, a food truck. So that will be included in the calculations. So all those elements associated to the events venue would be taken into account under percentage.
I think what Councilor Harper's getting at is how do we have such a difference between 2% from the applicant saying it's 2% and the county has come back and said it's 18%? Can you tell us how they identified the two differences?
Certainly, Mr. Worship. So in terms of how they calculated, so if you have the site plan shown, overall the whole view, you would see agricultural land and then a division into with an environmental protected zone. So the area that the county looks like was everything that is southeast in that section that is bordered by the environmental protected, and they took that into consideration for the amount rather than the specific items associated to the events venue.
So they included that whole area instead of just the event center and the items that are part of that application. Okay.
That's right.
So if I would be satisfied if the report does come back and after staff has looked at it. And I appreciate the update from the representative saying that they've modified that. So I do look forward to seeing those final comments and supports in regards to what the percentages look like of actual use. And then it's just really contained to the area for the event space. The other thing that is concerning to me that I'd like to ask is that there is outstanding taxes and an outstanding enforcement ongoing investigation with bylaw. Would this zoning ratify those outstanding issues?
For you, Mr. Bishop, yes, that would ratify in terms of the zoning concerns associated. I can't speak in terms of the finance, but yes, for zoning.
I can tell you what the outstanding taxes are. We can tell you that it'll be part of the application will be fixing the taxes. Don't worry. We know that. Yes, I know. I know. We're not talking good one. Yeah. But yes, you're right, Councilor Harper. All those issues will be fixed through the application.
Okay. This helps me clarify and understand why it's being brought forward. So that's all my comments and questions. Thank you.
Don't worry, I was $63 behind on my own, and I'm the mayor. So, and I had to pay a penalty. I read the wrong number. My fault. I was with the old tax bill and then taken. Okay, so I've got Councilor Kike and then Deputy Mayor Sandu.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, and I support on-farm diversified uses because it keeps the overall property in agricultural use, and it supports the income for the property and pays the taxes and supports our rural communities. Obviously, the process is flawed because people are doing this before the rezoning. The cart's before the horse, so we should try and do the zoning first and before we build. And I guess I was confused with the 18% to the county, and I see on the one slide it said request rezoning. So the actual rezoning is covering 18% of the property because you can see that big gray area on page 100 of our report. But I guess the actual use, so because is the site plan then limiting that usage to the parking lot, and they can't expand the parking lot in 3 years or build another barn or do something else? That's my question for staff. Are they still limited what they can do on that whole area that they're rezoning AXX?
For your worship, so in response to Councillor Rickett's question, should they have any additional items to want to be included, whether it's event related, they would need to pursue a building permit, and at that point they would identify that there's a zoning restrictions of the 2% that would limit anything further to that.
Okay, I've got Deputy Mayor Sandu.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to see this come before us as a public meeting file, and I look forward to the final report coming out. There's an appetite around our municipality for venues like this. The only thing I wish is people come for applications like this before bylaw visits them, not after the fact. This is at BA now, we have it. It's to make it legit, and there's others that are in the pipeline that would come to us. And that's as Councillor Rickike said, this is a diversified use in the agriculture area that would make income for those people, but also provide a service for our residents that need it. We lack good venues for weddings, for other events, and we don't have it in this municipality, and this is one of them. We did visit this venue for an event, I think a few years ago, and once this file goes through, and if it's successful, I look forward to visiting again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just comment that I'm happy to see that we've had a few event applications come through recently, and we're happy for that. And I can tell you that when it comes to this application, there will be no removal of agricultural lands. You already farm several of your lands, and you have hay fields that you've farmed, and this will not affect your farming operation. This has been here for a long time, and I look forward to this moving through. It's a beautiful venue, and I look forward to this moving through the process and getting this to the final leg, and ensuring that we have this zoned properly in the future. So thank you. Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. So I'll read that council will not make a decision on this matter tonight, but will receive the staff report for information. The matter referred back to staff for further recommendation report at a later date. I have recommendation that report PLN 2025-38 regarding public information meeting application zoning bylaw amendment D142501 for the lands known as 4264 line 8, 3291 County Road 27, and legally described as 4264 line 8 concession 8 south parts lot 1 be received, and that the comments received in writing and or made at the public meeting be received, and that the Office of Community Planning consider the matters raised and address the same in the future report. Okay, mover second, please. Moved by Councillor Ferragini, second by Councillor Scott. Seeing no further questions, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, we're almost done, Council. Follow-up. It is recommended that all comments and questions regarding the Town of Bradford, Gwillimbury 2025 soft services development charge and bylaw be directed to Natalie Carrier, Deputy Treasurer, via email at nataliecarrier@townofbradfordgwillimbury.com. All comments or questions on planning applications may be submitted in writing to planning@townofbwg.com. Written submissions on planning matters are required at a public meeting, a public planning meeting, but can be made at a later date and will be accepted up to the date that council makes a decision on the matter. Written submissions on planning matters will not be read at the council meeting, but will be forwarded to planning staff for consideration and or response. Council will be apprised of all public comments received prior to making a decision on the planning application. If you wish to receive information on a specific planning application or to be notified of an upcoming meeting related to a planning matter, please email plan@townofbwg.com. 10. Confirm proceedings. Recommendation that bylaw 2025-85, a bylaw to confirm proceedings of the council meeting dated August 12, 2025 be enacted. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Dykey, second by Councillor Scott. All in favor? Carried. Adjournment. Recommendation that the meeting is hereby adjourned at 9:25. Moved by Councillor Harper, second by Councillor Giordano. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Appreciate your time. We are adjourned.